Hello everyone. With the Five Nights at Freddy's chapter on its way to Dead by Daylight, just a few months after the March chapter, which is theorized and apparently 99% confirmed that it is in fact Ken Kaneki from Tokyo Ghoul, I just wanted to make a video where I share some of my most wanted, but probably never ever coming to the game, chapter concepts that I think would make behavior millions. But they're either too scared to acquire the license, or it would cause most players to leave the game. Tokyo Ghoul being directly before Five Nights at Freddy's in the killer roster is super iconic and very funny, which is why today I wanted to do this. Just brainstorming some otherwise taboo ideas that maybe not many others would think about. Comment below if you'd like to see more of this, because I bet I could think of plenty more chapters I would love to see come into the game. Or if you just like hearing me yap. Alright, don't click off just yet. I'm being completely serious when I say I genuinely want this. Yeah, it would destroy half the player base most likely, but it would also introduce an entire new fan base into a whole new genre of game. Everyone knows Minecraft, and one of the latest mobs added to the game, the Warden, would be a perfect fit for Dead by Daylight. At first I almost went with an Enderman, because Endermen are one of the most iconic mobs, and are directly based off a classic internet horror character, Slender Man, but I thought that it would be too obvious and not behavior-esque to do. Adding an Enderman would be cool conceptually, as a killer that can freely teleport like the nurse, but without the initial movement involved, or as opposed to having set locations like Sadako, or less of a teleport and more of a manually controlled phase like the Spirit, it would kinda kick ass, if you think about it. But one of the many issues I'm finding is that A, Endermen are mostly peaceful until you look at them, and B, as I've said, I think it's just too obvious of a choice. It's like adding another Demogorgon or another Xenomorph. Just one out of a million others, you know? I know technically there's like a million Wardens because Minecraft worlds are infinite and they summon depending on certain circumstances, but you gotta admit, you're only facing like one or two at a time. If you do end up facing 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, then that's that's your problem. Now back to the Enderman. It would totally change the tide of how loops are played, and maybe would be comparable to the nurse in terms of competitive performance. And most likely it would bring a lot of bugs as well. But truthfully, if there was a Minecraft chapter, I would much prefer the Enderman as like a legendary skin for the nurse or spirit or something. I also considered the newest of the new guys, the Creaking, as it acts similarly to Enderman, and has a title rather than a distinct name like the Warden. I didn't choose the Creaking or the Enderman for reasons you'll know later. Although I do think that the Creaking would make a very, very cool unknown cosmetic. I just think that Dead by Daylight would need a more threatening and powerful and deadly force that would get some good emotions for the entity. So that's why I chose the Warden. Bitch! The Warden is a creature that lives in a biome known as the Deep Dark, and is awoken from its slumber when something makes a bit too much noise inside of its home. The Warden is also completely blind, and sees the world through echolocation and sound waves. I think that if Dead by Daylight wants to make another completely original power instead of practically recycling previous killers to make new powers, they should really invest in a completely blind killer. Like seriously, imagine playing Survivor and being in a situation like this. Wouldn't that just be absolutely mortifying? I think we should make DBD scary again. Like how I first felt when facing the Trickster back when I first started playing, or how eerie and unnerving the unknown is. Maybe the Warden could use killer instinct or sound cues in order to play, and has a visual overlay like Freddy Krueger. Maybe it darkens the screen and makes it physically harder to see what's in front of you. And I think its power would have something to do with spreading skulk or sonar or otherwise finding ways to get survivors to reveal themselves to the killer. Imagine this. The Warden attacks a survivor and is infected with skulk, which reveals their outlined aura to the killer and makes them visible for Chase. The trick for survivors would be hiding in plain sight, and to keep survivors from holding the blind guy hostage in the endgame collapse or bullying the visually impaired killer, an idea for a passive effect for the Warden could be that being a certain distance away would alert its little antler things, making you vulnerable to get gooped and smashed. Another power concept I could see happening would be like Dracula and Vecna, where it has multiple powers that you cycle through that have completely different uses. Like a sonar beam that goes through walls that could be high risk, high reward power if you're that confident you found someone. And like I said with Skulk Infection, using power would be a good way to have your power spread to make it easier to find the survivors. Just think Artist, Plague, Wesker, or Demogorgon. A crazy mix of all 4 of those. A blind killer that has to work to be able to see you, and when it does spot you, it's probably game over. I think that if Mojang wanted to appeal to an older audience, inquiring with behavior about adding the Warden would be the right choice. Like how Scott Cawthon chose Dead by Daylight over games like Fortnite and Stumble Guys, which in my opinion would have cemented FNAF officially as a child's product when you have so much genuine potential to become a true horror icon. Whichever kid of his probably plays Dead by Daylight, thank you, as you have made your father make the best decision for his series probably ever, and you've just increased the lifespan of DBD for probably another 5 to 10 years. If Minecraft was a full-fledged chapter with a survivor, a killer, and a map, I think it's a pretty obvious choice to add Steve or Alex as a survivor, with maybe some of the new defaults as legendary skins. Their perks would probably have something to do with creativity, or using their environment to their advantage. Like, how funny would it be for Steve, of all people, to have a meta perk that blocks vaults for killers or something crazy and frustrating like that? A chance for behavior to break the game, but on purpose this time. As for the Warden's perks, maybe they would be all sound-based or have something to do with visual cues, or killer instinct. Like a perk that would improve aura reading, or a better stridor. And now, in classic SadBulldog fashion, where I overachieve for a small audience for a silly video, I made custom chase music for all of my killer concepts today, because I thought it would be too epic not to include. For the Warden, I tried making its chase theme sorta video gamey and kinda unserious, because you do have to remember that this is Minecraft. I also had to remember that this is Minecraft being put into a horror game, so I tried making a good mix of fun and scary. Like something that would make you say, oh, it's the Warden. Oh, it's the Warden. Feel free to skip around because it might get a bit repetitive, as killer chase music tends to do, but you also must remember that I'm no professional and this is all just for fun and conceptualizing. Now, before you listen, imagine the growls and the grumbles of the Warden as it digs through the earth with unimaginable force. And picture it chasing your favorite survivors through various jungle gyms and other acrobatic arrangements. Imagine it twisted by the entity's vision, putting it into a non-figurative blind rage, the souls within its chest pulsing like a beating heart, the twitching of those sensitive blue tendrils, the hot breath emitting from its eyeless face 15 inches from yours. Imagine hiding in plain sight, evading the monster that dreams of painful vengeance for whomever woke it up. I'll put a timestamp in the description for when the next concept begins, but other than that, enjoy my rendition into what I think the Warden's chase theme would be. As I mentioned in the beginning, Tokyo Ghoul being apparently added into the game via the new PTB in just about a day leaves Dead by Daylight very open for so many more anime collabs. Hell, a little while back there was an Attack on Titan cosmetic collab, and everyone loved that, so what's the harm in the entity bringing in one of the most iconic villains in anime into the fog? Cell, the Nucleus, the perfect life form. I think Cell would be a fantastic fit as a killer in the realm of Dead by Daylight. Actually, DBZ already has a DBD-esque game called Dragon Ball: The Breakers, where it's a 1 vs 7 asymmetrical action game where the survivors have to repair generators, collect items, hide, run, or fly away to survive the raider. Obviously, Cell in Dead by Daylight would be canonically sucked dry of his full potential by the entity, and wouldn't be able to destroy entire subsections of whatever map you're on with a single Kamehameha at full power, as that is probably not a viable part of gameplay. But I still imagine his power being very strong and very destructive, and requiring a lot of skill to master, which is why in his chase, which I'm not showing yet, I gave him not only a lullaby, but a 40-meter terror radius, which at the time of recording is only for Wesker. That means he has a huge and instantly recognizable presence on the playing field. Unless he's undetectable, he's pretty hard to miss. A lullaby is what Huntress, Trickster, and Onryo have to let survivors know their whereabouts long before the killer is actually within range. And for his power, I imagine it'll be partially ripped from DBZ Breakers and reworked slightly to fit Dead by Daylight's gameplay loop. I think he'd begin as a larva, crawling around the map like a freak, leaping onto survivors like Victor to absorb their energy and begin the process of evolution. After the bug, Cell would rise up from the husk and begin in Phase 1. In Phase 1, Cell can hover and fly over pallets or vaults when lunging, which gives him an extra long cooldown animation to allow survivors to get distance. I think it's a cool idea that the survivors' main defense, pallets and vaults, would be absolutely futile against the perfect life form, even in Phase 1. That just goes to show how powerful I'm making this guy. After some more hits and enough energy, Cell will evolve into Phase 2. In Phase 2, Cell can do what Phase 1 could do, as well as shoot a ki blast that has a small splash radius. And finally, after many more hits and much more collected energy, Cell goes into his final form. Perfect Cell, the definition of perfection, summed up into one green beetle creature that's hard to animate. In this form, as well as being able to do what Phases 1 and 2 could do, after charging enough ki, Cell will perform a Kamehameha with the full voice line and everything, being able to insta-down survivors if you hit them with it. I could kind of imagine it working like Pyramid Head's ability, mixed with the Death Slinger and the Oni Slam. It would be difficult to maneuver to make it fair for survivors, not be able to go through walls, but you can aim it certain ways to try to nick a survivor's head or try to get crazy shots through random holes on pieces of geometry. I can also imagine Cell's attacks and power having huge cooldowns and hopefully less environmental impact, so that the play area remains a fair game for both sides. Rather, as fair as DBD can get. The entity isn't exactly looking out for the health and the safety of the survivors, but at the same time, I too would get a bit frustrated if my meticulously crafted party game kept getting ruined by the cool beetle I found outside. Although I think it would be so cool if, depending on how the supposed Ken Kaneki looks in DBD, that would probably give some good visual inspiration for Cell's character design. You can't just stick a perfectly cell-shaded character into the game and call it a day. He would have to fit in with the style of DBD, which is low poly realism. He would probably look like one of those creepy, realistic 3D models of Cell Online, truthfully. But if I were in charge of character design, I'd have him look like he does in the anime, just with some realistic textures and the like. Kinda like how he looks in Jump Force, but a little more gross. Anyways, if Cell had a full-on DBZ, DBD chapter with a survivor and killer, I think it would be not only hilarious, but also kick-ass if my goat Yamcha was the survivor for this chapter. Cell picks on pretty much everyone but Yamcha, since he considers him to be so weak and pathetic that he really is no threat. Kinda like a narcissist's twisted vision of respect. If I don't make fun of you or hurt you, you're alright. Cell would totally underestimate Yamcha if he saw him in the trials. Like Dracula and Trevor. Old enemies stuck in a horribly nerfed state, forced to red stain mind game each other and juice each other for 5 gens in a jungle gym and get hit by pallets all fucking day, for all eternity. Goku is far too powerful. Yeah, I know the entity completely strips survivors of their prowess, but Goku is the can beat most anime protagonists while covered in itching powder, blind, deaf, sick with tar in his lungs, armless, legless, mute, has stage 5 blood cancer, has half a brain, no feeling in his mouth, no nerve endings, no organs, and no skeleton guy. And I genuinely think Goku would have just the wee tiniest bit of pushback for the entity. If anything, make him a legendary like Alucard over Trevor. That would bring in a behavior-illion dollars. I think Yamcha's perks would have something to do with his bravery, his hard-headedness, his toughness, and his fear of women. Cell would probably have some trial-bending, goofy-ass perks that would be OP and meta-altering on launch. Something having to do with his desire to continue evolving. and dreams of galactic destruction. For the perfect life form's chase/terror radius music, I tried to make it similar to how Dragon Ball's soundtrack is, with a lot of orchestral bits here and there, and some Godzilla-esque brass. I also made the actual chase part sound more like how old DVD chase themes were, where it's a horrifying and chaotic group of instruments sounding like the musicians playing it are the ones running from the killer. But the show must go on. Kinda like Clown's chase theme, mixed with the Tricksters. But hey, what the fuck do I know about music? Anyways, enjoy my interpretation of Perfect Cell's chase theme. For the next killer concept, this is why I trashed the idea of the creaking or an Enderman coming to the fog. If Behavior wanted to make $1 trillion behaviorlion instantaneously and effortlessly, all they would truthfully have to do is acquire the licenseless, free-to-edit, and world-renowned SCP Foundation. There are almost over 9,000 SCPs, and so many options for Behavior to pick out from. But honestly, as typical and as camp as this choice is, if I was in charge of picking one SCP to be put into Dead by Daylight, I would pick SCP-173. The original, the most iconic, and known in the fog as the statue, because its original design looked like legume. SCP-173 is a sentient and highly dangerous concrete statue that secretes human feces. Its origin is unknown, and it's excellent at twisting necks. Something something blah blah blah. It's a message about how humanity demands attention and just continues to produce waste, and the penalties of not paying attention result in catastrophe, a la death. Similarly with the Warden, where a blind killer is certainly due, I think that a killer that's basically the face of the blink and you die trope is a necessity for Dead by Daylight. For the statue's power, I think that a passive for the trial will be that survivors have like a blink timer whenever it's in view. Like how Freddy Krueger has his clock on the survivor HUD. Its actual ability should be an insta-kill neck snap, like Base Kit Tombstone Myers. Or if that's too OP and unfun, something to do with its disgusting poop vomit maybe. Maybe it hinders survivors and weakens their eyes or something, making them blink faster. Or it gives killer instinct to 173. Maybe Peanut could poop on command and make really funny clips online. Yeah, that would be his power. Thankfully, 173 has a very unique moveset in another game that we can borrow from, SCP Secret Lab. When the statue's alone or with another hostile SCP player, it can move freely and is the quickest of the bunch, as it slides across the floor with grace. In a room with a human, they suddenly gain a blink timer and begin the cycle of 173's hunt. It can only traverse in between blinks, but can choose where it wants to go at that time. The statue's chases would be so different and so unique compared to literally every other killer, maybe other than Nurse. Imagine 173's movement while not being looked at like an invisible wraith, able to zip around the map and hunt for survivors as fast as it wants. But the second a survivor catches wind of Peanut mucking around, it stops in its tracks and is given the choice to move to a set location ahead, like an instant Nurse blink with that one add-on where you see the location of the next blink. I could go on and on about how its poop could blend in with the teleport or how survivor blinks would work in third person. I'm not sure. There are so many SCPs, and Behavior technically has the power and legality to just grab the concept of Peanut and turn it into its own original thing, like with Ghostface. And like how when the big 173 copyright fiasco was going on the SCP Wiki as well as Secret Lab, the game devs designed their own Peanut, and the SCP Wiki would cycle through many different fan designs of 173, now available to everyone on the SCP-173 Redesigned Collab Hub. It's a great compilation of many different designs. You guys should check it out. If Behavior can make their own Ghostface and everyone loves him, I can only imagine their Peanut design would abso-fucking-lutely slap, and its blighted skin would be orgasmic. For the statue's chase music, I try to make it sound like it's actively hunting you, and it really, really wants you. Because remember, when it isn't actively being looked at, it can move as much as it wants, wherever it wants. I wanted its chase to sound like there's not much room to run or hide, and when it finds you, it'd be a huge jump scare. It's like it brought a surprise orchestra with it to the party. Similarly to the Blight or Nurse, I think Peanut's other lower layers wouldn't get much time to shine, since he would be moving around so fast. Although if you do hear it, that's a good sign to start running and watching your back. Enjoy the statue's chase theme, and I'll see you guys later. Well, that's gonna be it for my dream never ever killer concepts for Dead by Daylight. If you guys like this, I'd be happy to make more in the near future, as this isn't the end of my long list of wacky characters I would adore to see in the fog. Please consider supporting me on Patreon or becoming a YouTube member, or just subscribing. Anything helps, and thank you for watching. Bye!